So, inspiration for the love of Christ. So I wrote this song 3 or 4 years ago, around the same time I wrote Heart Back Home. And it came during a time in my life when things were going really well. So things at my job were going great. I had just released my first full-length album a couple years earlier, and I was kind of in like on a writing streak after being in a long season of having writer's block. So everything was kind of going really well, and I don't know what it was, but just a lot of different people in my life were sort of coming to me with just different trials and struggles that they were going through. So one friend was, having some struggles with his marriage. Another person was just really having a hard time in their career and feeling like they didn't make the right decision. I had another friend who was in a really bad health crisis and got a really bad diagnosis. Other people, were struggling with their kids or struggling at home with family life. And I don't know, as you get older, you don't see life through rosy glasses as much. And I kind of just came to realize, a lot of people are going through a lot of really difficult things, in spite of maybe what their hopes or dreams had been. We all have this idea of what we think our life is going to look like someday. And, sometimes I guess I was finding that, here's all these people that, in my mind, they kind of have it all together, maybe the way that things were posted on social media or that they present themselves in front of everyone else. It seems like things are going well. But here they are in private, and we're having these conversations, and they're like, life is just really tough all around. And, it's bottom line is it's not all I thought it was going to be, even though I got this thing that I wanted. And so I was having devotions one morning, and it just kind of occurred to me that, I could achieve some goal in my life that maybe I think about a lot, that preoccupies a lot of my thoughts, becoming a famous musician, maybe that'll happen someday. Marrying the love of my life and having a beautiful family, paying off all of my debts, being in prime health, whatever it is, looking at life from all these dimensions of ways that we imagine it, like once I get there, then things are going to be fine and I'll be good. But realizing, many times we get to that place in life and it's not all that we thought it was going to be. And I don't know what I had been reading, but specifically that week, but I was somewhere in the Old Testament, in the first 5 books, and I'm reading about Moses, and here's this guy that the Lord used mightily, and he grew up in Pharaoh's palace, right? So he has this he grows up in luxury, and he is told that he's Jewish, and he decides at some point in his life to kind of break away from the palace life and wants to identify with his people, the Jewish people, right? So he sees that there's something wrong between, the Jews are being taken advantage of by the Egyptians. And so he's like, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to set these people free, with the power that I have. This is why God placed me in Pharaoh's palace. So he goes down there and sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and he takes the Egyptian aside and murders him in cold blood, right? And he thinks like he's this avenger or whatever for God. And the next day he goes down to be amongst the Hebrews again, right? And a couple people recognize him. They're like, "Hey, that's the guy who killed the Egyptian guard." So he realizes he's been found out. Someone saw him or witnessed it, and so he flees. And this whole calling that Moses thought he had, all of a sudden, goes down the drain. So he goes over to, I think, Midian, and kind of lives this obscure life, right? Gets married, has a family, and just, it's like, what happened to Moses, the guy who grew up in Pharaoh's palace? So I can imagine, it doesn't say this in scripture, but like I can imagine he's going throughout his life thinking, I can't wait till God gives me that calling or that thing. Once that happens, I'll be good. Maybe he even, when he was in Midian, in obscurity, kind of let some of those dreams die and was like, I thought I was going to be this deliverer, but I wasn't, and maybe he's kind of disappointed in that. So finally, God comes to him, right, in the burning bush. He's now like 80 years old, and this is his big moment, right? Okay, the Lord shows up face to face, and he's like, I've got a mission for you. Now is the time that I'm going to give you your calling. And he says, okay, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him all these things. And Moses is kind of standing there stunned, like you can imagine, right? Like there's this voice coming out of the burning bush. And instead of Moses going, yes, finally, my calling, he goes, can you send someone else? And he's, I can imagine he was probably fearful. Maybe he, just felt like he didn't have the same energy that he did 40 years earlier. Who knows? But whatever it was, God finally brings him this calling, and Moses didn't want it anyway. And, the Lord kind of had to encourage him and say, okay, well, what if I send you some help? Moses was concerned that he wasn't a good speaker. So he's like, the Lord's like, well, go find Aaron, bring him into this, and we'll, I'll give you everything you need, basically. I'll supply it for you. But the bottom line is Moses didn't really want this when it finally came. So then he goes out and he does through all these miraculous signs and wonders. He takes the Jewish people out out from Egypt, right? And then you would think, okay, now from there, I'm good, right? But throughout the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, they're wandering through the wilderness, and Moses is just like every other page. He's falling on his face going, Lord, why did you call me to do this? These people are nuts. They don't want to follow you. They don't want to listen to the things that I have to say. And he's like desperate for answers. And he's just constantly going to God, like, why? Why did you give me this calling? And the Lord, it's a good thing actually that Moses had that need, because it constantly brought him back to the Lord for help, saying, Lord, I can't do this. I need to see your hand work in this. But the bottom line is, the bottom line for me was the Lord may bring something into my life. He may deliver me from my, all of my debts. I just recently paid off my student loans, and it was fantastic. It's a great feeling, but it's not like I have now reached these open fields of bliss. There's other things in my life that may come to realization that might not be all that I thought they were. So at one point, I'll get to kind of the verse that actually inspired this song. At one point, they're out in the wilderness, right? And Moses goes up onto Mount Sinai, and all this spectacular stuff happens with the fire coming down on the top of the mountain. And God gives Moses the 10 Commandments, right? Meanwhile, down at the bottom of the mountain, Aaron and all the Israelites are having this, party, and they form this golden calf, and then they're all just eating and drinking and smoking and doing whatever they do. It's a big party down there, not worshiping the Lord, right? So Moses comes down and he just can't believe what he's seeing after the Lord delivered them. And so, what am I trying to say here? So the Lord is very upset, obviously, with them. And he says, okay, you guys, you can go up into the promised land. I'm going to send my angel before you, but I myself am not going to go with you, because if I did, I would destroy you along the way. He's like, you guys are too rebellious. And Moses pleads with him. And we want the promised land, right? We want the thing. The Lord, yeah, okay. We kind of think of that as a secondary, benefit, but we actually just want the things that he can give us most of the time. And so Moses said this thing that was really profound, and it just reminded me of everything else I had been thinking about, that, what if I get the thing and the Lord's not in it? Is that really what I wanted? Is that really what my soul wants? Not just needs, but is that what I really wanted? And Moses, is far wiser than me. He has some foresight on this. And so realizing that God's going to send his angel, but his presence in itself is not going to go with him, he says this. He says, then I, Moses, said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not bring us up from here. For how then will it be known that your people and I have found grace in your sight, except you go with us? And so, I think it was just a moment where the Lord did something in my heart about that concept. As a Christian, I think many times as Christians, we know that the Lord is supposed to be our greatest joy and our greatest treasure and the thing and the person that we cherish. But in reality, we cherish the gifts and the things and the accomplishments much more. And so this was writing this song when I was going through these lyrics. It was just a moment where the Lord, downloaded something into my heart that wasn't there before. And I realized, even if this song becomes the song that sends me shooting off into success, even if I pay off all my debts, even if I, have this perfect family someday, it's not going to be worth it without the Lord. And so I wanted to write a song that examined all these different topics and ways that, things that we strive for, but in the world, but without the Lord, they don't have the same meaning or value. So that's it. The love of Christ. That's what the song, the love of Christ. That is really the greatest thing that we can take with us. And you know what? The thing about the love of Christ is we can take it with us anywhere, not just into our accomplishments, but into our sorrows, into our trials. And it is actually the thing of greatest value, more than anything we could do or possess on earth. So that's kind of what the song is supposed to convey or reflect. So